On October 4, 1992, a quiet Sunday evening in Amsterdam suddenly turned into a nightmare. In the Bijlmermeer district, a working-class neighborhood where families were cooking dinner, kids were playing, and people were relaxing at home, life changed in an instant. A massive Boeing 747 cargo jet, El Al Flight 1862, came crashing down into two apartment buildings. The fiery impact killed 43 people, passengers, crew, and residents, and left behind a scar so deep that even 3 decades later, the tragedy is still remembered as one of the darkest days in Dutch aviation history. The aircraft was a Boeing 747-200 freighter, operated by Israel's national airline, El Al. That night, it was making a scheduled stop in Amsterdam after departing New York's JFK Airport, before continuing on to Tel Aviv. On board were only 4 people. Captain Yitzhak Fuchs, 59 years old, a veteran pilot with over 25,000 flight hours and a background as an Israeli Air Force fighter pilot. First Officer Arnon Ohad, just 32, but already with more than 4,000 hours of experience. Flight Engineer Gedalia Sofer, a seasoned veteran with 26,000 hours in the air, and 1 passenger, 23-year-old El Al employee Anat Solomon, traveling home to Israel to get ready for her wedding. Everything about the flight looked normal. The plane was within its weight limits, and the crew was highly experienced. But fate had something else in store. At 6:20 p.m., Flight 1862 lifted off from Schiphol Airport, its 4 massive engines roaring over the city. Just 7 minutes later, disaster struck. With a thunderous explosion, the aircraft shook violently. Engine number 3, mounted under the right wing, suddenly broke free and tore away from the aircraft. As it ripped loose, it smashed into engine number 4, ripping that one off as well. From the ground, stunned eyewitnesses watched as 2 giant engines tumbled from the sky into a nearby lake. One police officer radioed in shock, "2 engines! They just fell off the plane." But the real danger wasn't just the loss of the engines. The force of the separation ripped away a 10-meter section of the wing, and with it, critical hydraulic systems needed to control the plane. The right wing was now crippled, while the left wing continued to produce lift. The balance of the aircraft was destroyed. Inside the cockpit, alarms blared. The crew quickly declared an emergency and requested to return to Schiphol. Air traffic control cleared them for runway 27, the airport's longest runway. But the crew had no idea just how much damage had been done. Their instruments still showed that both engines were attached. Believing that to be the case, they tried standard recovery procedures, lowering the flaps, extending the landing gear, and adjusting thrust. But instead of helping, these moves made the plane even more unstable. The jet began rolling hard. To the right, Captain Fuchs fought desperately to keep the plane level, but the Boeing was now almost uncontrollable. His final words, captured over the radio, were haunting. "Going down! Going down!" At 6:35 p.m., just 15 minutes after takeoff, El Al Flight 1862 rolled onto its side and nosedived into the Bijlmermeer neighborhood. The 747 slammed into 2 11-story apartment buildings, instantly exploding into a massive fireball. The impact tore through concrete and steel. Flames shot into the night sky. Residents described the deafening roar, the searing heat, and the walls collapsing around them. For many inside those buildings, there was no time to escape. Everyone on board was killed instantly, along with dozens of residents on the ground. The exact death toll has never been confirmed, because many victims were undocumented immigrants whose names were never officially recorded. The disaster was the worst aviation accident in Dutch history. Emergency crews poured into the scene, fighting fires and digging through smoldering rubble in search of survivors. For days afterward, smoke and the smell of jet fuel hung over the neighborhood. The city of Amsterdam mourned deeply, and the world wanted answers. Investigators soon uncovered a shocking truth. The engines of the Boeing 747 are mounted to the wings using structures called pylons, which are held in place by special fuse pins. These pins are designed to fail in extreme stress, but they're also prone to metal fatigue over time. On Flight 1862, one of those pins on engine number 3 had fractured. The engine tore loose, smashing into engine number 4 and ripping away part of the wing. With its hydraulics destroyed, the plane had no chance of recovery. And to make matters worse, the cockpit instruments never told the crew that both engines were gone. The pilots believed they were still there, so the actions they took to stabilize the plane actually made things worse. In the aftermath, Boeing was forced to redesign its pylon system. Airlines around the world introduced stricter inspection procedures to prevent this kind of silent failure from ever happening again. But for the families in Bijlmermeer, the scars never healed. The crash wasn't just an aviation accident, it was also a wake-up call about the dangers of dense urban flight, paths, and the importance of disaster preparedness. Today, in the Bijlmermeer district, a monument stands where the tragedy happened. It's called the Tree That Saw Everything. This single surviving tree, which withstood the explosion, now serves as a living memorial to the victims, a symbol of resilience, remembrance, and the lives cut short on that night. El Al Flight. 1862 remains one of the most haunting reminders in aviation history that sometimes even the smallest flaw, a single piece of metal, can set off a chain of events leading to catastrophe. Behind every accident are not just numbers, but real people with dreams, families, and futures that were tragically stolen. We remember the 43 lives lost that night in Amsterdam. If you're fascinated by aviation stories and crash investigations, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next deep dive.